Brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
That's good.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday. If you know what day of the week it is, we're working off of a Thursday idea here, although it's just been a crazy week down here in South Louisiana. Had the holiday on Monday, a couple days off for the winter weather, and we're back in action here on this Thursday. Means we're brought to you by Rouse's. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Pizzali back there on the ones and twos. If you are working today, appreciate you hanging out with us. If you're still at home or working from home or taking some time away, thanks for making us part of your time away. We'll get you to 3 o'clock here on the Hunt Palmer Show. We got tons to do. We're going to talk about LSU's new addition to its coaching staff here in 15 minutes. I've still got some thoughts on the college football playoff final, which is played between now and when we last left you on Monday. Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints and LouisianaSports.net, is going to come aboard at 2 o'clock to talk about the Saints and where they go from here on their coaching hire. I've got thoughts on that coming up here shortly. Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers, at 2:15. And Fox Sports, 10 best college football teams over the last 25 years. Where do the 2019 Tigers come in? We'll do all that over the next 2 hours. Appreciate you locking us in here. I guess before we start, let's just talk about the snow day. Beck, how'd the ducks do? Did they have enough water? Are the chickens okay? What's the word from the Casa de Beck? And is your wife home, or is she stuck somewhere?
No, she was supposed to fly out to Orlando for work on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. She moved that flight up to Monday, and she eventually got there. So she is still in Orlando. She wasn't supposed to be flying back till Saturday anyway. So she's fine. The house is fine. The ducks and chickens are all good.
The ducks and chickens are good.
The ducks were, I sent you a video. They went outside into the snow and then immediately went back in because it was cold. But then after that, they eventually went out and enjoyed a little bit of time in the snow. So they were fine. The chickens did not want any part of it. So they just kind of stayed in their coop. In the coop. Yeah, they stayed in the coop the whole day. So It was a good time though, man. We're everybody's still safe and sound at the house, so we're good.
What does a home alone husband whose wife's gone do when he's snowed in? Do you go play in the snow? Do you just watch movies all day and not do anything? Like, what are you doing?
Actually, we actually have a decent amount of friends that we've even known before we moved into our house that live on the same street as us. So I knew a lot of people. So everybody kind of just went out and walked around the neighborhood and then saw the sights and had some kids. They have some kids, so they were playing in the snow. And then we walked down to Olympia Stadium where they have the Breck Park over there. And we're sliding around on some makeshift sleds, if you will.
I saw pool floaties out there, cardboard boxes. I saw crawfish boil trays
of course,
being used.
I saw that too.
Anything anybody could use. Nobody had Actually, I saw one sled.
I don't know. How did you even get a sled?
It was
here?
in New Orleans. A buddy of mine in New Orleans, and they had an actual sled, which I'd never seen a sled.
New Orleans, by the way, got a ton. They got like more snow than we did, which is crazy.
They did. I mean, there was the official report I saw today was 10 inches. There was somewhere in the neighborhood of that at my house. So we prepped Myers on Monday night like it's going to snow tomorrow. He knows Frosty the Snowman.
Okay.
He knows about building a snowman. So we prepped him for that. So he woke up and said, guess what? It's snowing. Okay. So we walk out at 8 o'clock in the morning. He slept real late, like 8 o'clock. And he looks out. So we got to get dressed. And I texted Alyssa on Monday afternoon. I was like, we need gloves. Like we don't have any gloves. He has gardening gloves because he likes to pull weeds.
That's not going to cut it in the snow.
No. So he goes out there, and Alyssa is working virtually. I had already written 2 stories, so I was free for about an hour that I could go out there. He walked out into the snow, and it was snowing pretty hard at that point. It was cold, and like he had the beanie on and the hoodie on, but the gloves weren't doing a lot. He played for like 8 minutes unenthusiastically. I was trying to like pack a snowman together, but at that point it was all powder. We couldn't really do anything with it. And he kind of got sick of it. We put clothes back on at like 11:30 to go back out, and then again at like 4 to go back out when it had quit snowing. And he just didn't get it and didn't want to do it.
Not about it.
So yesterday, me and Myers woke up in pajamas, I worked the whole day, and then he watched TV most of the day. And we took a bath, and I took a shower at like 6. Took those pajamas off and put the next pajamas on. We did not even put clothes on yet. We didn't even attempt to go out yesterday. So it was a poor job by us of not having gloves ready for him. But I just don't think he was into it anyway. He's not going to remember this. He's only 3, and I feel like it's maybe once in a lifetime for me to have that much snow on the ground.
Yeah, probably so.
But we just kind of enjoyed sitting there doing much of nothing. It was not a lot of activity at the Palmer house over the last 2 days. But now we're back in action. He won't even go. He was so scarred yesterday. The snow on the street had melted, and I was trying to get him out of the house. Like, let's go ride your bike.
Yeah.
Let's go. And he just, no. We're watching Blaze. We're doing nothing. So not a lot of activity, not a lot of like magical moments for the Palmers. I thought it was ridiculous and amazing to see the snow. The one thing we did do a good job of, we had the food on hand. So we had gumbo on Tuesday, which was incidentally my birthday. I don't think I'll forget that one anytime soon. And then yesterday we put a pot roast on at like 8 in the morning, and the house smelled awesome all day. So that was good. The outside activities, not a lot going on at Casa de Palmer over the last 2 weeks. But glad to be back here, and hopefully everybody had a good couple of days away in the snow. All right, let's start now, the way we start every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
So since we last left you, there have been some movement in the NFL. Ben Johnson has been named the the head coach of the Chicago Bears. We knew that on Monday when we were with you, but also the Jets have filled their vacancy with Aaron Glenn. Those were the 2 hottest names on the circuit for the NFL, and Glenn was certainly connected to the Saints. I don't know if the travel was an issue from him getting from New York to New Orleans in the middle of that snow. I don't know why he did leave the Jets facility without agreeing to that deal, but when it was said that he was going to meet with the Jets on Monday and then with the Saints on Tuesday or Wednesday, you felt like if he leaves the Jets facility without an agreement, the Saints will have a chance to make their pitch. And he did leave the facility, but he never got to New Orleans. And so the Jets make Aaron Glenn their guy. So where does that leave New Orleans at this point? Well, obviously, you've got Joe Brady, who we believe the Saints to be interested in. We believe them to have had a video interview with him. He's still playing in the AFC playoffs as the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills. He cannot meet with the Saints in person until that season is over. So very, very firmly put him in the possibilities list. Mike McCarthy is the other name. It was said that he was interested in that Bears opening. I think a lot of people in Chicago, based on what I was listening to and seeing on Twitter, felt like McCarthy had a real chance to get that job. And I don't know how excited they were about that, but they felt like it was a real possibility. Obviously, that's not going to happen with Ben Johnson becoming the head coach there. So McCarthy, who has talked to the Saints very much in the possibilities camp, they've had some other interviews with Weaver and with Kafka, and you kind of look around and you feel like you're down to about 4 names that have been announced and that we know about. And it feels like, to me, that McCarthy and Brady are out in front. We'll talk to Ross Jackson coming up a little bit later, and he feels like Joe Brady is the guy. And one of the things that, is going to be a talking point if Joe Brady gets this job is his age. He's very, very young. He was super young when he came to LSU and helped engineer the greatest offense in the history of college football. And then he went to Carolina, and now he's been in Buffalo. And I think, well, is he too young to take the reins of an organization? You've had some very, very mature men in Sean Payton for the last 15 years and Dennis Allen after that have been through a lot of NFL wars as your head coach for a long time. Joe Brady is much younger than those guys, but he's not wildly young at all when you consider what has happened in the NFL, really not over the last 10 years, over the course of the last 50 years. Brady's not an outlier in terms of his age. Joe Brady is 35 years old. That's just not all that young. When you think of young head coaches, of course, you immediately go to Sean McVay, who took the Rams job at 30. And then Mike McDaniel feels like he's pretty young, but he took the Dolphins job at 38. Kyle Shanahan was hired at 37. Zach Taylor was 35 when he took the Bengals job. Those guys are all a little bit older than Joe Brady when he could get this job. But consider some of the other coaches. It's not just this new wave of young offensive minds that have been hired as young people. There have been young people hired throughout the course of time, and some of them had a ton of success in the NFL. Mike Tomlin got the Steelers job at 34. That's younger than Joe Brady right now. Bill Cowher got the Steelers job at 34. That's younger than Joe Brady is right now. John Gruden got the Raiders job at 34, younger than Joe Brady is right now. Let's go further back. John Madden got the Raiders job at 32. Don Shula got a head job with the Colts at 33. Now, those are all successful endeavors and great coaches and Hall of Fame coaches in some sense, Super Bowl winning coaches. And there are some that haven't worked out. I mean, Eric Mangini got the Jets job at 34. Josh McDaniels, 32 years old when he was hired. Lane Kiffin was 31 when the Raiders gave him a shot. Mike Shanahan was hired by the Raiders at 35 years old. So this is not new. It's not a new wave. It's not something that's foreign. This has been going on for decades. 35 is very much in the mix. He's got a little bit of a baby face, and he's been a little behind the curtains. I think far more concerning is the wrong word. Far more a talking point that we can have as opposed to age is, okay, is he prepared to lead an organization? Because that's different than age. That's just maturity level and aptitude. And you know that if you hire Mike McCarthy, he can do that. Like, there is a pretty high floor with Mike McCarthy. I don't think Mike McCarthy would take the reins of the Saints and completely be overwhelmed and drive it into a ditch. Like, that's not a possibility. It may not work. He may win 7 or 8 games most of the time, and you never play for anything of significance. But he's not going to be overwhelmed, and he can handle things. There's a possibility, a greater possibility, that Joe Brady could walk in and just not be prepared to have the job. That really doesn't have anything to do with his age. That has everything to do with his experience, and everybody's got to get their first chance once. Obviously, Joe Brady was in the middle of a really, really good organization in New Orleans for that short time he was there on the offensive side as a support staff guy. Obviously, he coached elite players at LSU and was a big help in that offensively. And if you give him the reins of an MVP-level quarterback, he can score a ton of points because that's what he did at the end of last year as an interim as the offensive coordinator for the Bills, and that's what he's done this year and still has the Bills playing with 4 teams left in the NFL playoffs. But running the organization, making hires, making decisions in-game, all those types of things, and building culture, he's never done. McCarthy has. But age is not really going to be a talking point here. That's just not all that relevant. You're talking about, I just named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 guys that have been younger or right about his age that have been hired throughout the course of time. So he was a young hot shot when LSU hired him in this market when we first were introduced to Joe Brady. Keep in mind, that was 6 years ago. So that's a lot of maturity that goes on. When you're in your 20s, you are a young guy. Mid-30s, it's a little interesting to me, and this is just a personal thing, that the new head coach of the Saints could be younger than me. That's a little weird. But he's clearly a quality football coach, and I think a guy that presents an exciting option. It's just, do you want to go with the volatile boomer bust type unproven hire? Do you want to go with kind of the steady older presence? That's something we're not going to find out until the Saints make this hire. But as I said back on Monday, if the Saints hire a coach this week, it'll be Aaron Glenn. If the Saints don't hire a coach this week, I think it's Joe Brady. We now know that the Saints are not hiring Aaron Glenn, and the clock's ticking on whether or not it's this week. There's probably better than a 50% chance that Joe Brady is not coaching the Bills next week. I would suggest there's a better than 50% chance the Chiefs win that game in Arrowhead. I give the Bills a real chance to win it, but that is probably what we're waiting on here for the Saints. I don't know that they're in a rush to make sure they run to the podium and hire the fired coach in McCarthy, or one of the coaches who's not coaching anything right now, that you're talking about Kafka, you're talking about Weaver. Brady's kind of what you're waiting for here. That's the domino that can't fall until they lose, which could be 3 weeks, it could be 3 days. But age, not really worth discussing, in my opinion, at this point. That's our Genesis opening drive. Genesis Every Car on the Lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. We'll step aside. LSU is reported to make a staff hire and addition on an underserved part of the football. We'll talk about that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is that website. Every car on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Safety is important, obviously. And it's important to the folks at Genesis. And that's why every single car on the line of vehicles was given the IIHA top safety pick. And every model in the line from the entry level to the highest end model comes with the same baseline safety features. That's not a spot where they're willing to cut any corners. Get behind the wheel. You can feel the comfort. You can see the style. You can feel the ease with its drive, and you can see all the bells and whistles that they've got over there on a brand new Genesis. The safety is something that you need to do a little research on, and it's all right there in front of you. Genesis is as safe a car as there is on the road. And they've also got some perks when you buy a Genesis, including a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Get on by and see them now that the roads are safe to drive on. Airline at Pico. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Airline at Pico. They're fairly new in that location. Probably driven by it a bunch of times, but may have never seen it off to the side there. It's across from Women's Hospital. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Check them out online, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
There it is, the extra mile. On the border of expected and extraordinary. For those willing to go further. Like vans customized for work or play. With safety and tech to keep you connected. Supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team. And backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps were held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
Jerry and Benny Payne began Central Plumbing Company out of their driveway in Tanglewood Subdivision. 50 years later and 4 generations down the road, we continue to serve Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas for all of their plumbing needs. Residential, commercial, industrial, or hospitality, Central Plumbing is here 24/7, 365.
We want to thank our customers, family, and friends for 50 years of success.
And looking forward to 50 more.
At Ochsner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Ochsner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one: you. Ochsner Andrews.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
Thursday show is brought to you by Rouse's. Maybe running a little low on groceries after the last couple of days of being cooped up in the house. If you're looking to get out and get ready for the weekend, Rouse is a great option to pick up all your grocery items. That includes king cakes, by the way. They're gonna have king cakes. They've got plenty of king cakes They're going to make 600,000 of them during Carnival season this year. Of course, we're right in the middle of Carnival season. You can smell that gourmet cinnamon dough throughout the entire store. They make traditional king cakes, they make the filled king cakes, and they've got specialty king cake flavors that are new every single year, including this year. I was checking out Rouse's Burbank and Lee back on Friday when I was in there last, and they had the strawberry, they had the blueberry, they had, of course, the cinnamon cream cheese filling as well. If you're looking for your king cake, whether it's just to have on the kitchen counter during this time of year or you're heading to a party, you get together of some sort, get on by Rouse's. They've always got enough king cake for you to walk right in, grab one, and get on your way. There's been a lot of shakeup over at LSU in terms of special teams over the last week. We got the word late last week that LSU was losing Bob Diaco to North Carolina, where he was going to join Bill Belichick's staff. For those not familiar with Diaco's role at LSU over the last few seasons, he's been an analyst, so not a position coach or a coordinator, but he's been as involved as anybody on the special team side of things. When we were out in preseason camp, Diaco was running all the special teams drills with punting, field goal kicking, the return teams, all that. Diaco's right in the middle of it. He's one of the guys that LSU allots for me to interview as a position coach over the course of the pregame shows for 13 games. So an analyst that was a little bit more forward than just the guys who sit back and break down tape and scribble notes down. He's very much involved in all that. We talked to Xavion Thomas a couple times during the season about the return game, and Bob Diaco's down there, and he's working the iPad, and they're figuring some things out special teams-wise. In name, he was not LSU special teams coordinator, but very much Bob Diaco was right in the middle of all of LSU's special teams situations. Slade Nagel was initially given that title. He was actually more of the tight ends coach and now moved on to Houston to be the offensive coordinator. So either way you slice it, you want to talk about the guy who kind of had the title in name. You want to talk about the analyst who was kind of involved more at practice. Either way, LSU's special teams brain trust has moved on. So you got to fill that one way or another. And Football Scoop last night reported that LSU is making an addition to its staff with an eye on special teams, and that is by bringing in Grambling special teams coordinator Aman Anad, who has spent time as a special teams assistant at Penn State and Baylor and was at Grambling this past season. Incidentally, when he was at Penn State, the Nittany Lions led the Big Ten in blocked kicks when he was there. Not a guy that is new to coaching at all. He's actually been coaching since he was a student assistant back at Old Dominion in 2011. So he's been at this nearly 15 years. And so I don't have any word, and Football Scoop did not mention in their piece whether or not he would be a true special teams coordinator, which LSU could theoretically hire and then put an analyst over there to help with tight ends, or whether he's going to kind of fill the Diaco role where you're talking about a guy who is very much hands-on with the special teams, very much handling that side of things, but is not an official coordinator, is more of a support staff role. That's just a decision Brian Kelly's going to make. When you decide you're going to have a safeties coach and a cornerbacks coach instead of a secondary coach, and then you're going to have a defensive line coach and an edge rushers coach, which LSU has both of those, you're going to have to cut something somewhere as far as on-field official assistants go. And right now, over the past 2 years, LSU has decided to do that from a special teams perspective. We'll see what the future holds for Coach Aman Anand. Either way, LSU's got to be better on special teams. This is a team that was, in the 2024 season, 126th out of 134. There were only about 9 teams worse than LSU as far as punting average. Now, that's not net punting average. It wasn't like LSU got gashed in the punt return game, but LSU had one punt that went 50 yards this year. LSU finished at a 39.6 yard per punt average. Again, that's just not good enough. You're down there with UL Monroe, Florida International, Northern Illinois, Texas State, UTEP, Troy. This is the company you're keeping as far as punting the ball goes, and there's no reason for that. Now, I don't blame that on Bob Diaco and or Slade Nagel and some kind of analyst. That's the punters just not doing an awesome job at hanging the ball high and kicking it a long way. You've now gone out and got Chadwick, who's a punter that was an all-conference selection in Conference USA last year at Middle Tennessee State. Hopefully, he brings you a little bit more. He had a big leg this year. He's 6'3", and routinely kicked the ball further than 60 yards this year. Or last year, I should say, I guess, at this point, at Middle Tennessee. I wrote a portal profile piece on him on LouisianaSports.net. He seems to be maybe a little bit more talented. You had Jay Bramlett do a really nice job the first 2 years under Brian Kelly. You tried to split those duties this year with Peyton Todd and Blake Oxendorf, and one was doing pooch kicks, and one was doing longer kicks, and one was doing the rugby kicks, and it was just kind of a hodgepodge of mediocrity. And we saw that in September. And we saw it again, well, August, I guess it was, and we saw it really the continuation of the season. Again, I don't put that all on the special teams coach, and then certainly LSU had some highlights from a special teams perspective. You did a great job in the return game. Xavier Thomas was awesome. You returned kicks for touchdowns in consecutive games, the bowl game, and then obviously the game against Oklahoma in Tiger Stadium in the regular season finale. That was Aaron Anderson and Xavier Thomas that did that. I thought LSU did a good job in the return game all year. You've got a solid kicker in Damian Ramos who did a good job for you. You're knocking kicks out of the end zone every single time out there on the kickoff perspective, which is fantastic to see. So there are some positives for LSU from a special teams perspective. I don't think they were an abject disaster like they were in Brian Kelly's first year, where you couldn't handle a punt, couldn't handle a kickoff. You're getting offsides on kickoffs. You're getting poor tackling in the return game. Like, everything they did was bad. Certainly getting an extra point block to lose a game, chief among those. Nothing like that this year to me. But I do think that it's important that you have a good set of eyes on special teams. You brought in a guy who, I tell you that he comes from Grambling, and you automatically roll your eyes like, why are we hiring a coach from the SWAC? That doesn't make any sense. But you realize that he's a younger guy. He spent some time at Baylor and Penn State. So the bright lights in the big-time college football is not completely foreign to him. Now he'll come in. It's just a matter of what role he takes on at LSU. You've got plenty of athletes at LSU to be really, really, really good on special teams. That should be a focus for LSU. And quite frankly, if you're going to try to compete for championships, hidden yards, field position, execution at a high level, it's got to matter across the board. You're trying to be the difference between a 6-6 team or a 7-5 team or an 8-4 team. Well, who really cares? You got to just play a little bit better. But if you're trying to beat the best teams in the country in the Southeastern Conference, and you're trying to do so week in and week out, you got to be better on special teams than LSU certainly was punting the ball this year. You bring in some new talent, you bring in a new coach, and we'll see whether or not LSU can improve their special teams moving forward. So that's your news of the day in LSU football. If you're looking for our football content, you can find it at Hunt on LSU on YouTube, or certainly wherever you find your podcast. Just search Hunt on LSU. It's all LSU football all year round. So you're not going to get hoops content there. You're not going to get baseball content there. It's all football all the time. It's Hunt on LSU over on YouTube or wherever you find your podcast. So seek that out. Like, subscribe, rate, and view. We certainly do appreciate it. Nick Saban said the biggest mistake of his career was leaving LSU. By now, you've probably heard that over the last couple of days based on Ryan Clark's podcast, The Pivot. I'll tell you what my thoughts are on that coming up at 1:45. I also wrote about it over at LouisianaSports.net if you want to go find my column there under the LSU tab. When we come back, it has been 3 days, I understand, but they did play a football game back on Monday night that we haven't talked about. So let's talk about college football playoff final and what that means for Ohio State, for the 12-team college football playoff, and even the LSU side of things. We'll talk about that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com is that website. It's not going to be snowing forever around here. Spring's actually going to come pretty quickly, and that's a time where a lot of people like to spend time outdoors. If you do like to spend time outdoors and you'd like to improve your outdoor situation, whether it's an audio situation or a home viewing situation with a television, Mitchell Fisher and his team at Audio Video Security Solutions are happy to help you out with all of that. If you want to put in some surround sound or just some high-quality speakers outside because you love to spend some time at the outdoor kitchen or just playing in the backyard, if you've got a pool and you want a situation where you can watch TV from there, they can hook you up at Audio Video Security Solutions. The phone number I give you is Mitchell Fisher's phone number. He's the owner of the company. You're getting the owner's number. That's a pretty good point person to have when it comes to customer service. His number is 225-439-7920. Again, it's 225-439-7920. Call Mitchell and tell him what you want. He'll come out. They'll give you that consultation. He'll look around and show you what they can do for you. You can also contact him online at avssla.com. It's Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
BRAC teamed up to reimagine your parks, and you imagined big. With your help, we went to work, creating 12 beautiful community parks across the parish. A family-sized water park, miles and miles of trails, and parks just for your dogs. There are more places to splash, to explore, to run wild, and even soar. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
Got chores that need some extra muscle, but a large piece of equipment is overkill? That's what John Deere compact utility tractors were made for. Powerful enough for the work you need to do. Compact enough for how you need to do it. Find the equipment that's right for you at Sunshine Quality Solutions. Check out our current promotions and learn more about what it means to be powered by sunshine at sunequip.com.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
At Bayou Automotive, we believe in a sales process that puts you first. We want you to experience an easy purchase with clear pricing and great service. Let Bayou Ford and Bayou Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
All right, we've covered the local angles with football, with the Saints coaching search, and then LSU hiring a new special team staffer. We got to get to the national stuff that we saw on Monday night. Ohio State wins the national championship game over Notre Dame. 34-23 was the final in this one. I previewed it on Monday. I said, look, I think Ohio State is significantly a bit more talented than Notre Dame. I think they've got a much better offense than Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame's going to be able to line up and just run the ball on Ohio State and 3 yards in a cloud of dust their way to fight and scrap and claw and stay in it and then win it late. I don't see them being able to do that against a much more talented team. I like Ohio State. I think I picked it 30-17. And it was interesting to watch this game play out because you saw Notre Dame's game plan right there on the first drive. You saw really the only punch Notre Dame could throw. I said on Monday, like, their only chance is to win the turnover battle 3-0 and to try to junk up the football game. And they came out on that first drive and they executed to perfection. They went 3 yards at a time. They picked up a couple of fourth downs. They ran 9 minutes and 45 seconds off the clock. It took 75 yards on 18 plays for a touchdown. That's as good as Notre Dame can do, and that's really their only chance. They were never going to be able to be as explosive as Ohio State. They were never going to be able to keep up with Ohio State, but if they could keep the reins on the game and try to keep the game around 25 points, maybe there's a chance. But what you saw after that drive that Notre Dame went on, you saw Ohio State goes 75 yards on 11 plays, touchdown, 76 yards on 10 plays, touchdown, 80 yards on 12 plays, touchdown, 75 yards on 5 plays, touchdown. Like, Notre Dame just could not stop Ohio. They could not cover Ohio State. Will Howard was like 13 of 14 at one point. That's supposed to be the strength of this Notre Dame team, is the great secondary. And Ohio State kind of got whatever they wanted when they wanted it. And you look up, and at a certain point, okay, it's 31-7. 31-7. That's when a bunch of my friends turned it off. I still got the game on. I'm paying attention. And Notre Dame kept fighting. And they actually took some shots down the field, and they made some plays. Like Greathouse got going. He had 2 catches for over 30 yards for touchdowns. And they made it an interesting game. And I just vehemently disagree with Marcus Freeman's decision to try to kick that short field goal in the fourth quarter. You're down 16 points. You've got the ball on the 9-yard line. You need 2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions. Even if you kick the field goal and make it, you still need to score 2 touchdowns. And I just don't love your chances of getting there by giving the ball away when you're already on the 9-yard line. No, I hate Riley Leonard's chances of converting on 4th and 9 from the 9. I don't think he's good at all. He's good at running for 4 yards, and that doesn't work on 3rd and 9. So I don't like your chances of it, but that's your only chance. Like, that's your only chance. Cutting it to 13 and then giving the ball back to an Ohio State offense that's ramming it down your throat, it doesn't seem like a very good opportunity for you. And it turns out they don't even cut it to 13 because they missed the field goal. And then your defense does bow its neck and get a stop, and your offense does go down there and get the touchdown to Greathouse. So you are able to cut it to 8, and you give Ohio State the ball back, and you can't get the stop you need, which probably wasn't going to happen. Your only real chance there was to go for the 8 points with 9 minutes to go to get as close as you can. Because at least at that point, if they go down and get a field goal, it's still only 11, and then you don't need 2 touchdowns. Like there just wasn't enough time for Notre Dame to try to plod along at that point. You got to go get it. You're not as good as them. You've got to go get it. And Marcus Freeman did so many things that were so good all season long. He got his team to respond to the terrible loss against Northern Illinois. He got them to run the table there. They dominated some teams that were scrappy upstarts, like Army and Navy. They took care of their business defensively and beat Indiana. They go to the Superdome, and they played a really good game against Georgia. It's always going to be a caveat to me because the backup quarterback played for the other team, but still, it's still Georgia. They still got a lot of 4 and 5 stars out there, and Notre Dame went down there and won the game. And then you weren't as good as Penn State, but you played tough. You overcame some turnovers. You never gave in. You overcame a deficit like he did. And then you did the great thing where you ran the team on there against Georgia, and that looked great from a coaching perspective. And like there's so many things to be positive with Marcus Freeman about over the course of this season. But at the biggest moment, that fake punt sucked, and the decision not to go for the touchdown on 4th and goal from the 9, it's not 4th and 26 from your own 5. It's 4th and goal from the 9. You have to complete a pass. And they needed to go for that and go for the 2-point conversion at that point. They didn't, and they basically ran out of time because they weren't going to be able to slow Ohio State down enough over those last 9 minutes. So I thought that there were some really questionable calls by Marcus Freeman, but ultimately the best team in the sport won it. And I think that's more likely to happen in this format than the format we had previously. And I think that college football generally crowns the best team. But when you're always going to let the best team in a 12-team playoff. And then their chances of going out there and winning are really good. And Ohio State wouldn't have gotten in the BCS format, and they wouldn't have gotten in the 4-team playoff format. And they're in this format. And everybody felt like they were probably the best team, and it just took them a long time to show that. You can suggest as a college football fan that that's bad, that they were let off the hook for losing a terrible game to Michigan. You could say that game doesn't mean anything anymore. You can say that, any negative you want to say about what Ohio State did this year and the fact that they still emerged as national champions is your right to say that. I personally, as I've said many times, I like the fact that more games across the country mattered in November. I like the fact that we were watching cool settings with big-time brands in big-time stadiums like Tennessee and Ohio State and Clemson and Texas and Notre Dame. We're watching all those teams play in great home venues and great bowl sites, and I didn't think it lasted too long. I was perfectly fine with the entire process, and I'm okay with the fact that Ohio State is the national champion, even though they completely laid an egg in their game against Michigan. Like, I'm okay with that. I understand the other side of the coin, but I think it's good to let teams try to figure it out on the field. And I'm okay with Ole Miss winning a baseball national championship after being atrocious for a month of conference play. And I'm okay with this Ohio State team becoming the national champions, even though they had one really tough game at Oregon and then just a disaster against Michigan. I thought they were the best team. I thought they earned it. And I feel today, looking back at this college football season, kind of like I think you generally feel at the end of the NBA playoffs. We're like, yeah, it takes a long time. But there's a lot of drama, and the best team usually comes out on top. In the NBA, it's really hard for the lesser team to win 4 out of 7. And in college football, you let the better team in and you give them an opportunity to go play. A lot of times they're going to find their way through that playoff. And Ohio State got that done. As far as Notre Dame goes, I think that they are still in a similar spot that they've been in for 15, 18 years. They've got a good team. They've got some 4-star recruits. They've got some guys that are going to play in the NFL. I don't think their top-end talent stands up to the elite level in college football. I think they're going to have a hard time winning a national championship. But they're a good football team, and they deserve to be where they were. And they got annihilated for 3 quarters and played a real scrappy 4th quarter. And it's not enough. And that's kind of what I thought Notre Dame was when we entered this thing. So Ohio State wins the championship. I'm sure their fans now can stop gnashing their teeth over the Michigan situation. It doesn't really matter that much. But that's just the way that they felt their entire lives, because you couldn't get where you were trying to go without going through Michigan. And now you can. And that's the same thing for Duke and North Carolina basketball. It's now the same thing in the Iron Bowl. It's more common in sports to be able to drop a game here and there to your rival and still be able to accomplish some things. And Ohio State proved that this season. Beck, I'm sure you were watching this one. Anything that I've said that stands out as being really dumb, or was that just a brilliant segment by me breaking down the state of college football in this game?
I think it's a great observation.
Thanks,
there you
Coach
go,
McMahon. Appreciate that very much, Coach McMahon, giving me the goods there. Speaking of Coach McMahon, they play coming up on Saturday against Alabama. We'll talk to Chris Blair about that 30 minutes from right now. We'll chat with Ross Jackson coming up here in 15 minutes or so as the Saints continue this look towards their next head coach. What's next for the Black and Gold, and is the weather been a deterrent for this team trying to hire a new head coach? We'll talk to Ross coming up at straight up 2 o'clock. I wrote a column for LouisianaSports.net on Wednesday morning that kind of talked about Nick Saban saying the biggest mistake he ever made was leaving LSU. And I think there are some layers to that comment. I think there's some context that needs to be provided, and in my opinion, on kind of what he means by all of that. So we'll talk a little bit about that to close out hour number 1 coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. They're the best in the business. It doesn't always have to be a full-scale renovation. Those can be intimidating, both from just the scope of work, the amount of time that you could be out of your home or unable to access part of your home. And of course, the cost of that can be a little prohibited to some people when you're talking about a full-scale renovation. Now, One Bath and Closets can do them. And if you're looking for that, give them a call, and they're happy to help you with it. But it doesn't always have to be a full-scale renovation. It can be something as simple as a tub-to-shower conversion. That's something they do all the time. If you don't use your bathtub, get rid of it. Put in a glass walk-in shower from the folks at One Bath and Closets. Changes the look of your bathroom, changes the functionality of your bathroom, and adds some value to your home as well. It starts with a free consultation. You go to onebathandclosets.com, you reach out to David. He comes out and they show you what they can do for you. If financing is something you're interested in, 18 months, 0% if you qualify. It's all there at One Bath and Closets. You can find them online at onebathandclosets.com, onebathandclosets.com.
The Windsor Senior Living Community in Mandeville, Louisiana is a beautiful, vibrant apartment community geared towards seniors. They are nestled right in the heart of Mandeville, where seniors live a more carefree lifestyle in spacious apartments with the peace of mind that comes from having a little extra help. Call the Windsor at 985-624-8040 to schedule a lunch and tour. Come see how the Windsor can be your passport to peace of mind.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps were held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
At Bayou Automotive, we believe in a sales process that puts you first. We want you to experience an easy purchase with clear pricing and great service. Let Bayou Ford and Bayou Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram be your trusted partners in finding your perfect vehicle. The crew at Bayou Automotive is going to do right by you.
Jerry and Benny Payne began Central Plumbing Company out of their driveway in Tanglewood subdivision. 50 years later and 4 generations down the road, we continue to serve Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas for all of their plumbing needs. Residential, commercial, industrial, or hospitality, Central Plumbing is here 24/7, 365.
We want to thank our customers, family, and friends for 50 years of success.
And looking forward to 50 more.
At Auctioner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Auctioner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one: you. Auctioner Andrews Institute. Long live you.
BRAC teamed up to reimagine your parks, and you imagined big. With your help, we went to work, creating 12 beautiful community parks across the parish. A family-sized water park, miles and miles of trails, and parks just for your dogs. There are more places to splash, to explore, to run wild, and even soar. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. BRAC, your #1 park system in the nation.
Got chores that need some extra muscle, but a large piece of equipment is overkill? That's what John Deere compact utility tractors.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
I think most of you who are listening to this show today, in one way, shape, or form, heard or read or saw Nick Saban's comments to Ryan Clark on the Pivot. It's a long-form interview that he and Saban sat down for the Pivot, and one of the things that came out of it was Saban saying the biggest professional mistake he ever made was leaving LSU to go to the Dolphins. Now, I think if you're the most romantic LSU fan, you can say he knows that LSU is a place he should have been, never should have gone to the Dolphins, and then he didn't really want to be at Alabama. He wanted to be at LSU, but LSU wasn't available, so he had to coach it out at Alabama, even though he knows that LSU is a place he liked way better. And I don't necessarily buy that. I think if, and I don't know Nick Saban, this is my guess. Nick Saban wanted to coach in the Southeastern Conference and saw why it was so attractive from afar. And then once he got into it and saw the types of players that he could recruit at LSU, realized that that's where he wanted to coach. And when he signs Marcus Spears and signs Michael Clayton and coaches Andrew Whitworth and Chad Lavallee, and then Dwayne Bowe and Craig Davis come along, and Joseph Adai is on his team, and you look at the talent that was assembled there, that ultimately Jamarcus Russell was next up, you understand that that's a different level than what you could do at Michigan State and some of the places that he had been previously. And he reached the top of the mountain. And he talked about standing outside Skip Bertman's office and talking to his agent, Jimmy Sexton, who asked him a very simple question. Do you want to be Vince Lombardi or do you want to be Bear Bryant? And Saban said without hesitation, according to him, Bear Bryant. You want to coach college. But the NFL came calling, and that's the highest level. And y'all know how Saban's wired. He had to take on that challenge. And I don't think it took him very long at all to realize I'm not exactly loving this. Yeah, these guys are really good players. Yeah, this is the highest level. It's not like they were terrible in Miami either. But he didn't have a quarterback. And you can't coach the same way in college, in the NFL as you can in college. You can't just berate pros. And that's the way Saban's always coached. Intense, loud, assertive. It's a way to coach 19-year-olds who understand the chain of command and who's in charge, as opposed to 31-year-old multimillionaires who are going to look at you and go, calm down. So he wanted to go back to the SEC, and Alabama was open. He'd have taken the Georgia job. He'd have taken the Tennessee job. He'd have taken the Auburn job. And he'd have been awesome at all those places. But Alabama was open, and they got him. And I think he very, very much enjoyed his time in Tuscaloosa as the head coach there. I think he thinks it was a wonderful place to reach the peaks that he did and become the greatest college football coach of all time. I also think he thinks highly of LSU. And this is a guess. I wrote this at LouisianaSports.net, and I understand I can't prove this. I think he probably would have rather taken LSU from the ashes and built a 7 national championship behemoth, being the only guy who could ever do that, as opposed to just having his statue next to Gene Stallings and Bear Bryant. Now, Gene Stallings isn't Bear Bryant, we understand. But Bear Bryant and Saban are kind of equals in terms of their accomplishments in 2 very, very, very different eras. There isn't an equal here at LSU. It's just be him. And when you look at the roster, I put this stat in my column at LouisianaSports.net. The roster Nick Saban left Les Miles had 8 eventual first-round picks on it. That's more than Auburn has had since 2006. It's 2025. He had built a roster so talented that there's no telling what he actually would have done at LSU, considering the fact that the beast he built in Alabama would not have been there. What if the Mike Shula stuff what if Alabama from 2006 through now is what Tennessee was, where they just wandered the wilderness with a huge stadium and national championship trophy and a crazy passionate fan base, but they just couldn't get the right coach? That could happen at Alabama. And meanwhile, Nick Saban's churning through this. And there just wasn't a lot to stop Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa, but LSU, which he created, did stop him a couple of times. They stopped him in 2019, and theoretically could have stopped him in 2023. Cam Newton stopped him, and a kick 6 stopped him. But there wasn't a lot stopping him, and there wouldn't have been a lot stopping him in Baton Rouge. So I think he understands if he had to do it over again, knowing everything he knows, he would have stayed at LSU. But I don't think that means he was bummed out he had to go coach Alabama. That's the thing that LSU fans would like to hear, but it's not really realistic. And I do think, because I've said this, from afar and not personally, this is all professional, it's all fan base, it's all sports. Sports are not real life. As far as Nick Saban goes, I detested him at Alabama. Detested him. I hated the fact that he ruined every November for an LSU fan, including me. And it's easy to dislike a guy who seems to be angry and grumpy all the time and treats people poorly on the sideline and isn't always the nicest guy to the media. And that's the easy guy not to like. And I hated him when he was at Alabama. Not personally, I didn't know him, but I hated the head coach at Alabama. And now that that's passed, and now that he's on game day, and now that he talks openly about his time at LSU, and that stuff subsided, I think that the perception or the feeling, not perception, the feeling of Nick Saban down here in Louisiana is different than it was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. It just is. And maybe one day he can come back. I said this in my column, the 2003 team's 25th anniversary is going to be in 3 years. maybe that's the day he can walk out there with that team and get the ovation that he deserves. I couldn't give him a ton of credit for creating what LSU was while he was beating our brains in every first week of November. I couldn't. Like, it's too hard. It's too miserable for Leonard Fournette's undefeated team to go over there and just get annihilated. For the team that you had in 2012 that you felt like was super talented, that he came in here and stole it in Tiger Stadium with McCarron and Yeldon. To knock Jaden Daniels off the field in 2023. Like, I can't. That hurts. Now that stuff's gone, and it feels different now. And you hear that sometimes now that he's doing some of these more candid interviews because he doesn't have a team to recruit. It's a different deal. That's it for hour number 1. We're back after Sports Center with hour number 2, our Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
At Bayou Automotive, we believe in a sales process that puts you first. We want you to experience an easy purchase with clear pricing and great service. Let Bayou Ford and Bayou Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram be your trusted partners in finding your perfect vehicle. The crew at Bayou Automotive is going to do right by you.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals. But many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps were held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
Jerry and Benny Payne began Central Plumbing Company out of their driveway in Tanglewood Subdivision. 50 years later and 4 generations down the road, we continue to serve Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas for all of their plumbing needs. Residential, commercial, industrial, or hospitality, Central Plumbing is here 24/7, 365.
We want to thank our customers, family, and friends for 50 years of success.
And looking forward to 50 more.
At Auctioner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Auctioner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one: you. Auctioner Andrews Institute. Long live you.
Breck teamed up to reimagine your parks, and you imagined big. With your help, we went to work, creating 12 beautiful community parks across the parish. A family-sized water park, miles and miles of trails, and parks just for your dogs. There are more places to splash, to explore, to run wild, and even soar. You imagine.
And you see him cut right in front of you. What do you do?
I'd probably ask him what he's doing and point out that there's
Louisiana.
I'm Doug Brown. The NBA in Paris today. 3 minutes to go in the first half with the Spurs leading the Pacers 52-50. Tonight at 9:30 Eastern here on ESPN Radio, we've got the Celtics and Lakers in Los Angeles. Only 3 days away now from Championship Sunday in the NFL. In the NFC title game, the Commanders try to continue their dream run when they play the Eagles. When did Washington coach Dan Quinn start to think Jaden Daniels and this team was legit?
I knew early on the poise was really good. And then as it got into these moments where it became great, that's a big deal. I thought our team over the last maybe 6 weeks, we've gotten better on the field, but we've also gotten better in between our ears.
Dan Quinn, Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski will take over play calling again next season after giving it up for part of this season. The Browns also promote Tommy Rees to be their new offensive coordinator.
Hey, it's your resident Super Bowl champ, Chris Candy, coming up Friday. Everyone knows I've been Nick Sirianni's biggest critic, but has he done enough for me to believe in him in the biggest moment? It's Unsportsmanlike, weekday mornings at 6, right here on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and ESPNU.
Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boy, does it smell good.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
That's good.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
Hour 2, Thursday edition of The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Rouse's Markets, official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints. Rouse's, this feels like home. Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers, coming to you in 15 minutes. Talk about LSU's trip to Tuscaloosa coming up. 7:30 tip-off from Coleman Coliseum for the Tigers and the Tide. But right now, let's talk some Saints. Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints, LouisianaSports.net. Good enough to give us a little bit of time. Ross, how we doing?
Hey, buddy, doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. Good to be here with you.
It is our pleasure to have you on. All right, we're obviously in the midst of this coaching search, and there are some dominoes that are starting to fall. Earlier this week, we saw Ben Johnson be taken by the Chicago Bears. We saw Aaron Glenn decide to go to the New York Jets. What do those two decisions mean for the New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, I think the Ben Johnson one, the real impact there is that like the Bears were bigger competitors for Mike McCarthy than probably anybody else. And so if New Orleans is indeed interested in Mike McCarthy, and we do expect that they'll have an interview with him sometime next week, then that ends up effectively putting the New Orleans Saints in a situation where they're running mostly uncontested for a guy like Mike McCarthy. So that opens up an option for them. The other piece is, of course, Aaron Glenn choosing the Jets means that he didn't choose New Orleans. So it means that the Saints head coaching search is still on, right? The Saints were expected to have Aaron Glenn here in New Orleans at some point. That would have been rescheduled post the storm. But, of course, with Aaron Glenn choosing New York, that meeting won't happen. And so that just keeps the New Orleans Saints kind of in the search and allows them to be able to continue on down the rest of their candidate list. I do think they still have solid candidates available, but it just means that they're kind of on to the next at this point.
How would you have classified Aaron Glenn as the Saints' favorite choice based on what you've heard and kind of what you think?
I'd probably put him as a top candidate. I don't think that any team really goes in with one number one guy. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I guess maybe it depends on the hiring cycle. But for me, like I always looked at sort of the tier one of New Orleans Saints interest being Aaron Glenn, Mike McCarthy, potentially Joe Brady. And I think Darren Rizzi's probably in that category as well. And then you kind of just go tier by tier from there. That's kind of the way that I look at it for New Orleans. So I think that Aaron Glenn is a top option off the board, but I don't think that puts New Orleans in a situation where they're not going to get a different top option in their building.
All right, I want to talk about some of these options first, and then I want to talk about the competition for those options because Jacksonville looks like an absolute mess right now, and then I'm not sure what's going on out in Las Vegas. So let's talk about McCarthy, and let's talk about a couple of the other guys that the Saints have interviewed. How do you handicap that situation? First, I guess, with the two offensive guys, Brady and McCarthy.
Yeah, I think that with Brady and McCarthy, the way that I look at them is kind of the next tier for New Orleans, or the remainder of the top tier. I think Darren Rizzi might be in there too, but that's the way that I look at those two guys. I think McCarthy is somebody that's maybe the safer choice, which isn't a bad thing, but is a safer choice. been there. He's done it before. He's been in the New Orleans organization. He's won Super Bowls. He's taken teams to the playoffs. There's been all the disappointing playoff exits, but, he's done the thing, and he has an overall experienced winning head coach in the NFL. Whereas Brady, I think, is a little bit more of a risk in that he is a first-time head coach, or would be a first-time head coach if hired, but I think you need a little bit of risk. I think this New Orleans Saints team would be invigorated, and this fan base would be invigorated with a little bit of risk and not playing it so safe and being willing to go after the young offensive mind that they, liked, something that they did back in 2006, which worked out well for them. But I don't think that has to be the scale of success here. I think simply, is he a guy that can lead a room? Is he a guy that can put together the offense and the scheme that you want? And is he the guy that can go out there and get you the defensive scheme that you want? If the answers are yes, then let him grow into the role. So I'm a little bit more pro Brady than I am McCarthy, but I think those two guys are probably the top options for New Orleans at this point.
We saw how quickly that the two Lions coordinators were scooped up after Detroit lost. I mean, that happened very, very quickly. Joe Brady's obviously still coaching at this point, and is it a situation where the Saints feel like they could be kind of held hostage here if the Bills win on Sunday at Arrowhead and you don't get to maybe in-person interview for some time, and then all of a sudden maybe you've got some competition and some other guys get hired? I mean, what's the timeline and the time crunch look like because Brady's still coaching?
Yeah, the good news is that no matter what, if the Bills advance or they're eliminated this weekend, the Saints can interview Joe Brady next week. Same thing for Kellen Moore, same thing for Cliff Kingsbury. What they couldn't do if that coach is moving on to the Super Bowl is they couldn't officially arrive at a deal. So it would be pretty similar to what happened with Clint Kubiak last year when they were in the offensive coordinator search, to where you kind of got the story during Senior Bowl week before the Super Bowl that the Saints were going to agree with terms for employment when it came to Clint Kubiak. So it would be that, and then the official deal would be signed after the Super Bowl. But they don't have to wait to talk to them until after the Super Bowl because of the bye week between the conference championship as well as and the Super Bowl. So that's where the advantage is, where they're not really held hostage in a situation like that.
Anthony Weaver is a name we've heard, obviously the defensive coordinator with the Miami Dolphins. He's 44 years old, was a second-round pick back in his playing days, and has spent a lot of time now as a coach. What do you like about Anthony Weaver, and what kind of chances do you give him to be the next coach of the Saints?
Yeah, he's going to be the first in-person interview after Darren Rizzi, right? Because Darren Rizzi did his in-person interview already. So his interview is set for tomorrow, Anthony Weaver's is. And I like Anthony Weaver. I think he might be a year or two away from being a head coach, but this is a patient organization. If you hired him now to get ahead of it and let him grow into the role, I think that's something that you could see happening. I think that he's a good leader. He's somebody that would bring an entirely refreshed look at defense to New Orleans, which I think is very necessary and kind of maybe an underrated need for the Saints this offseason in addition to all this head coaching search. And he's somebody that players would immediately attach to as a former player himself. Brings a lot of the similar culture builder qualifications that you looked at with Aaron Glenn, but would just be, somebody that wouldn't have the organizational ties.
All right, let's talk about the competition here because, as I mentioned, Jacksonville seems like a mess to me. They just started their coaching search and then in the middle of it fired their general manager. So now they've got to deal with that as well as the coaching search. And then you've got things out in Las Vegas that generally feel like a mess as long as there's Davis in charge. So what do you think about where the Saints stand in that hierarchy right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, their competition changes depending upon who they're going after, right? I think that they're a little bit uncontested. They're kind of in the clear right now when it comes to Mike McCarthy. Younger guys like Anthony Weaver, Kellen Moore, those guys will probably generate more interest elsewhere and things like that. I think Joe Brady's kind of the biggest one that the Saints would probably run into some competition with. You look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, who, yes, just fired their general manager, but the way that I look at it is that, like, the people stepped in and arrested their bully. You know what I mean? It's not a terrible situation for them. They're being bullied by this guy, and now that guy's not there anymore. So it actually opens them up and makes them a lot more of an appealing place. They were way down the road on Liam Cohen, the offensive there in Tampa. So logic says that if they want another offensive guy, then getting in the running for Joe Brady would be the next logical step, although Robert Saleh and Patrick Graham are still very much in the conversation over there. So that's where I think the biggest competition is going to be, is Jacksonville for Kellen Moore, Jacksonville for Joe Brady. So for the Saints, once they get the opportunity to interview one of those guys, they need to be the first interview. If that person is their top candidate or one of their top candidates, the Saints need to do what the Jets did to them, to every other team out there, and say, no, you come here to New Orleans first, and then if you leave here, you can go and talk to the other guys, but you're coming here to New Orleans.
Would you be surprised if a new name surfaced for an interview, or do you think we've kind of got the pool?
I wouldn't be super surprised by it, if I'm being honest. I think this is an opportunity to continue to expand and open up your search now that you're moving into the next phase of in-person interviews and things like that. One name to watch out for, which wouldn't technically be a new name, but he didn't do a virtual interview, would be Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. He withdrew himself from all the head coach conversation because his team was in the playoffs and he wanted to focus on his team. I can't imagine any general manager or search committee or whatever that's looking for their next head coach looking at Cliff Kingsbury and saying, man, that really ticks me off. I don't want anything to do with that guy anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So once he becomes available for those in-person interviews and when his team is not, when that season is over in Washington, if teams are still looking for and if the Saints are still open, I wouldn't be surprised to see his name added to the list.
Wherever you find your podcast, you can find Ross Jackson, Locked On Saints. Certainly you can find his written work over at louisianasports.net as well. Ross, we appreciate some time. I know you'll stay on top of it. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely, buddy. Take care. Stay safe. Thanks for having me on. I'll talk to you soon.
That is Ross Jackson from louisianasports.net and Locked On Saints. I think I feel like we've kind of got our pool here. I'm going to do a little bit more reading on Anthony Weaver. That was a name, candidly. I didn't know. I can't name you every offensive and defensive coordinator in the NFL currently, and I did not know the Dolphins' defensive coordinator. That was off my radar. And he's not a guy I've spent a lot of time looking at. But as you start to see some names ticked off the board and you start to realize that the Saints are not going to be talking to Joe Brady over the next couple of days, and we feel like Mike McCarthy's next week as well, you start to look at potential interviews that could happen, and Weaver's name certainly comes to the forefront there. So maybe something worth looking for. He's bounced around in his coaching time. He spent 1 year at Florida as a grad assistant, 1 year at North Texas as a linebacker coach, 1 year with the Jets as defensive line coach. Then he went to the Bills. Then he spent a couple of years at Cleveland. Then he spent 4 years at Houston, and then was with Baltimore for a year as a defensive line coach and the run game coordinator. Then he spent years as assistant head coach, and now he's with the Dolphins. Like, he's bounced around a lot. Now, that's not uncommon for head coaches, but it's a guy that's seen a lot. It's been inside a lot of different organizations, and has just now gotten the opportunity to run one side of the ball as a defensive coordinator. So it's a pretty quick rise there, from just a position coach to boom coordinator, then boom to a head coach. But maybe something worth looking at here. I still feel like Joe Brady may be the leader in the clubhouse, but what's your competition like? He mentioned that he thinks Jacksonville becomes more attractive now that they've moved on from Balky, their general manager. That's an owner that's had some weird things to say in the past and kind of a volatile situation over there, but Joe Brady's a Florida native, so maybe that's a place he'd like to go spend his time as head coach for the first time. We'll just have to see, but it's fascinating nonetheless to see how the Saints kind of stack up and where they turn coming up next. All right, let's go to Chris Blair. We'll do that when we come back. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales, service, and finance team, and backed by the 1-star you know. So go the extra mile. It's never crowded, because so few have what it takes to go there. Mercedes-Benz Vans.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps were held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
Jerry and Benny Payne began Central Plumbing Company out of their driveway in Tanglewood subdivision. 50 years later and 4 generations down the road, we continue to serve Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas for all of their plumbing needs. Residential, commercial, industrial, or hospitality, Central Plumbing is here 24/7, 365.
We want to thank our customers, family, and friends for 50 years of success.
And looking forward to 50 more.
At Ochsner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Ochsner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one: you. Ochsner Andrews Institute. Long live you.
Breck teamed up to reimagine your parks, and you imagined big. With your help, we went to work, creating 12 beautiful community parks across the parish. A family-sized water park, miles and miles of trails, and parks just for your dogs. There are more places.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
Thursday shows brought to you by Rouse's Markets, official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints. Looking for king cake? Rouse's is your stop. They're going to make 600,000 of them. So if you're looking for one, get on by Rouse's today. Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers, good enough to give us a little bit of time on this Thursday. Chris, how are you?
Good, man. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was that's a memorable
nice
one there.
Snow day. Yeah. It's nice to get a snow day for your birthday.
I was kind of dreading it when I saw that there's a forecast for some winter precipitation. I was like, the streets are going to be bad. This is a terrible weather day. I didn't know it was going to be 10 inches in a winter wonderland. That was a little more than I had bargained for. So we'll take it. That's one I'll remember for a long time. But I appreciate that very much. Traveling very much back on the agenda now, and so y'all can hit the road for Tuscaloosa tomorrow. LSU got the week off. What do you think Matt McMahon's kind of focus was this week, is they didn't have to prepare for a game on Tuesday or Wednesday?
It's interesting. Coach and I got together on Monday to do his show in studio, obviously with the weather coming in. And, one of the things he and I discussed, I said, Coach, you take a look at the game against Ole Miss. It's a 2-point deficit, low-scoring game. The Arkansas game, you're down 2, but it's a low-scoring game. Even in the loss at Texas A&M, it's a 30-30 tie. And I know, when they came into the season, there was, kind of this thought that maybe they'd be able to move up and down the floor at a high pace, which you see a lot of teams doing, certainly in the SEC. But, and I asked him, I said, do you think this might be the roadmap based on where we are now for LSU to be successful, to basically play games in the mud, to try to keep them in the 60s as opposed to the 80s and 90s, which seems to be a common thing now among SEC teams? And, he said, yeah, that may be where we are right now. So my guess is, and I'm completely guessing because like everybody else, I've been stuck in the house for 3 days, is that's probably what they're trying to do. Now, I don't believe that's, hey, we're going to change the whole complexion of our team, but I think they're going to try to to be that team. Because goodness knows the next couple of games, I mean, you're taking on teams that, they win and lose games, Hunt, scoring 90 plus, which is concerning. And since SEC play has started, LSU's not really been able to scratch that 80 and 90 threshold. So, I think they're going to work on maybe creating a new identity for this team. When you look at the 3 games that I mentioned, there were times where when LSU was able to slow it down, especially defensively, a little zone press that when they cross the timeline, there's 20 seconds, and then maybe they have to use 10 or 12 seconds on the shot clock in the half court. I thought it was much better than playing at a higher pace. So we'll wait and see. I mean, goodness knows they're going to be challenged on Saturday against Alabama, who, as I said, I mean, they win games 103 to 97, and they lose games, 100 to 97. So we'll see which way wins out. I just don't think LSU can go toe-to-toe with Alabama and say, let's go run up and down the floor.
What's that building like there in Coleman now that Alabama's kind of established itself as a top 10 basketball program year in, year out? It's
an absolute just when LSU shows up, and Alabama's obviously been the way they have since Nate Oates has been there. I mean, it's just the way it's erected. It's like a big aircraft hangar.
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect. It's just there's a lot of metal, a little bit of concrete on the floor, and then wood on the court. Outside of that, when it gets loud, man, it is extremely loud. It is a difficult place to play. Coach Brady has said that for years, even when he was coaching. He said, when they've got it right, that's a tough place to play because it's kind of small, it's kind of intimate, the crowd's on you. And like I said, just the way the architecture is, it's just like a reverberation machine. So it's a tough place to play, and goodness knows LSU's not had a lot of success going back to Dale Brown, John Brady, you name it. It's always been a tough place for LSU to win.
No doubt about that. It's been a house of horrors for LSU from a basketball perspective. How much pressure do you feel like is on Cam Carter to shoulder the majority of this offense right now? It just feels like if he's not clicking, LSU has a hard time finding an identity.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and, that's the other thing that Coach and I talked about Monday is, he scored 27 and you win against Arkansas by 4. When he struggles and only has 13 or 16 and is not as efficient and has to take, 20, 30 shots to reach double-figure scoring, and there's nobody else to help pick up that slack, that's where LSU has suffered. And, frankly, Cam's the kind of guy that wants to go out and give you a 20-plus performance. I mean, goodness knows he's done it a bunch this year. I think there's only a handful of games, if memory serves, where he's been in the single digits, and he's got 7 or 8, I think, 20-plus performance games. But, Coach has said, we got to find somebody else to help provide that scoring. I mean, he's playing well over 35 minutes a game, but you can ill afford to take him out. And, that's what happened in the Ole Miss game. You had a long lull of 6+ minutes where LSU can't score a basket. In the Texas A&M game down the stretch there, I mean, it was like 43-43, and then suddenly it became a 9-point lead, and LSU again went without scoring. And I think the problem is he didn't get the ball in his hands. I mean, they came down, took some quick shots, wasn't a whole lot of passing. So I think it's twofold. I think you certainly want to give him the opportunity to score 20+ because he's capable of doing that every night against every team in this league. But at the same time, it's a lot of pressure for him to have to go out there and say, I got to go score 30 or we're not going to win this game. You and I talked about it when Jalen Reed went down. I mean, you're going to have to get 15 to 18 points from your front court. I mean, that's conservative. And sometimes you've been able to do that, and most times in conference play you haven't been able to do that. Victorious Miller had a tough start to SEC play after really kind of coming into his own in the non-conference as a true freshman, and now he's been sidelined by the ankle injury. How long will it take for him to again, he was just now acclimating to SEC play when he gets injured. How long is that going to take him now once he comes back off of injury? And who else are you looking for? You look down the bench. Who can you get 15, 18 points from?
Yeah, that's kind of the question. It's probably going to have to come from some shots from your backcourt. I would imagine Mike Williams and Jordan Sears are going to have to make some shots to help Cam Carter. Sears struggled from three-point range on Saturday, and that was over the course of the time where LSU struggled to score those 8 minutes where Cam Carter wasn't as involved. I feel like there's probably a better chance those two guys throw in 5 or 6 threes as opposed to asking Corey Chess to go score 12 points, no?
Oh, I think you're 100% right. And, credit to Mike Williams. I want to brag on him a little bit. I mean, you look at the way this roster was put together prior to the season. I mean, it's guard heavy. And suddenly you got one of the few returning guys who I thought really started to get comfortable in SEC play down the stretch, played well for you. Suddenly he's having a hard time finding minutes. And there were games where he just didn't play. And it would be easy in this day and age for somebody to go, you know what, I'm checking out. There certainly has been a precedent set for players doing that, even at LSU, and he hasn't, and he's stuck with it. And he's I think we'll see more minutes, and I think you're right. I think that's what the coaching staff believes is that Mike's a pretty good 3-point shooter, and we can probably manufacture some shots with him. But one of the big concerning things for me, Hunt, and I'm sure you've watched it, analytics will show you that off the dribble threes are nowhere close to as accurate as inside-outside threes. And LSU's shooting a lot of off the dribble threes, and that's from the backcourt. They did it time and time again against Texas A&M, and frankly, Buzz Williams and the Aggies were happy to see them do it. If they hit one or two, great. They're not going to do that all night long, and they didn't. And LSU has the ability that we've seen to be able to drive a guy one-on-one and get to the paint. And most of the teams in the SEC, Hunt, are going to collapse their defense. That's the style they play. They live and die by giving up 3-point shots. LSU is not taking advantage of that. I don't know if it's a decision-making issue or they just panic when they get deep into the lane, but they've got to drive and then get Jordan Sears an open three, 10 toes to the basket, set, catch, and shoot. Same thing for Cam. Same thing for Mike. Same thing for Jai. And there's too much dribbling and then rise with a hand in their face. And the opponents will take that shot all day long.
We'll see. It's going to be a tough one for the Tigers in Tuscaloosa. That's a tough place for teams to win. Ole Miss managed to do it, but not a lot. They've done it over the last 4 or 5 years. Safe travels to Tuscaloosa. We'll talk to you next week.
You got it, Hunt.
He's Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers. Look, it's this is a bad matchup for LSU on Saturday. I'll just say that. We'll break the game down tomorrow. But you're talking about an LSU team that really lacks an offensive punch right now. And you're talking about an Alabama team that just rolls the ball out and scores 95. I mean, just in their sleep, throws up 95. Now, Ole Miss stopped them. Ole Miss, Bama shot it poorly. They slowed the game down, and they rebounded, and Ole Miss did it. Now, Chris Beard is one of the best defensive coaches in the country. So it is possible to slow Alabama down in that building, but very few do it. And so it feels like LSU's scoring somewhere in the neighborhood of 65, 68 points in SEC games, and Alabama just falls out of bed and scores 90. So you do the math on that. It's not super encouraging. So I'll try tomorrow to come up with some reasons for optimism and why LSU can keep it close. I just can't promise we'll see them on Saturday night. It's another 7:30 tip on a Saturday on the road, which I'm not super pumped about for my post-game story on LouisianaSports.net, which won't be written until like 11:30 p.m. But part of the gig. I've seen worse jobs to do, so we'll make it happen on Saturday night. All right, we got 30 minutes to go here on a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Appreciate you hanging out here with us. Fox Sports came up with a list of the top 10 college football teams since 2000. In your head, you're going, 2019 LSU. I'll tell you what they thought of 2019 LSU. It might surprise you. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is that website. They make things so easy for you. That's one of the great perks of being a Genesis driver. The convenience from start to finish. You can start your shopping process online. Every car on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. If you see something you like, would like to test drive it, you can go to the dealership. They'd love to have you. It's a great facility, and the staff's awesome. If you don't want to go to the dealership, that's okay too. It's part of the convenience. They'll come to you. They'll drive the car right to your door, whether that's at work or at home. One of their brand ambassadors will hop in the car with you. You can go for a quick test drive, see that difference in driving that Genesis vehicle. And if you think, all right, this is the one for me, you don't have to go to the dealership at that point either. They do digital delivery. They can do some e-contracts. You never have to set foot on the dealership property to purchase a car. You don't even have to set foot on the dealership property to get the car maintenanced, and it's complimentary. They're going to send somebody to you with a vehicle. You can get your vehicle driven right back to the dealership. They'll handle your maintenance complimentary for 3 years, and they'll drive it right back to you when it's ready. It can't be any easier than that. It's just part of being a Genesis driver. When you think Genesis, think luxury. When you think luxury, don't just think, I can't afford that. Give them a shot. It's luxury experience at a reasonable price. It's Genesis, and you can find it right here in our capital city at Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
Got chores that need some extra muscle, but a large piece of equipment is overkill? That's what John Deere compact utility tractors were made for. Powerful enough for the work you need to do. Compact enough for how you need to do it. Find the equipment that's right for you at Sunshine Quality Solutions. Check out our current promotions and learn more about what it means to be powered by sunshine at sunequip.com.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps were held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
Jerry and Benny Payne began Central Plumbing Company out of their driveway in Tanglewood subdivision. 50 years later and 4 generations down the road, we continue to serve Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas for all of their plumbing needs. Residential, commercial, industrial, or hospitality, Central Plumbing is here 24/7, 365.
We want to thank our customers, family, and friends for 50 years.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
All right. Hope you're safe out there. Hope you're warming up out there. I was encouraged driving in on Nicholson from my house to work today. You couldn't really tell anything had happened on Nicholson. Now, off to the sides, obviously, there's snow on the ground, but the road itself was completely normal. So if you kind of been a little stir crazy, looking to maybe get out of the house, I'm not telling you to leave the house, but I'm suggesting that there may be an opportunity for you to do so this afternoon, as we've got temps that are pushing 50 degrees, and the roads are looking a lot better, certainly, than they did yesterday. And, of course, Tuesday was a complete non-starter as far as traveling goes. So getting back to normal here, as we got temps like pushing 60 this weekend. So our fun in the snow is just about over, and get back to some semblance of a work week. Had the holiday for most on Monday, and then a couple days of snow. Now back in action here for us, at least on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Fox Sports, bit of a clickbait thing here, but I clicked it. Top 10 college football teams since 2000. And I'll just start to tick them off. You know that LSU's got 3 national championship teams over this time, so do they check in on this list? I didn't anticipate 2007 would. You look at a team that loses 2 games, they're probably not going to get the benefit of the doubt. I thought that team was really, really good. They got hurt significantly over the course of a season, and they lost 2 games to Kentucky and Arkansas, which is a pretty easy disqualifier if you're talking about all-time teams. But here's what Fox had to say, and I'll kind of give my 2 cents on it. I'll kind of run through it rather quickly. Number 10, you got the 2008 Florida Gators. That's, of course, Tim Tebow's a team that he piloted. The 06 team, Chris Leak was the quarterback. Tebow was there in 2010. It was Jeff Demps and Chris Rady and Percy Harvin and Aaron Hernandez and Riley Cooper. And Riley, is that right? There were 2 Riley Coopers. Riley Cooper from Florida and the LSU baseball one. I said the Florida one, and then my head went to the hefty lefty on the baseball team. Same name. That's okay. Yeah, that team was awesome. Brandon Spikes, phenomenal on defense. Like, they were really, really, really good. And so I have no issue with them being in the top 10. The 2018 Clemson team checks in here at number 9. That's the one that just throttled Alabama out in Santa Clara. Trevor Lawrence was the quarterback. Travis Etienne was the running back, the ACC's all-time touchdown scorer. Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins were first-round picks on the defensive line. A.J. Terrell was a first-round pick eventually. They beat Notre Dame 30-3 and then beat Alabama 44-16. So you're talking about a 74-19 run in the 2 playoff games. That's a really, really good Clemson team. So to put them at number 9, I was good with. 2023 Michigan at number 8. They didn't really throw the ball, but their defense was awesome, and they ran the ball really well. McCarthy kind of did what he had to do. I don't know if I'm immediately going to put him up there, even though that defense was legit. There's no doubt. I feel like some of those other teams I might take because they're dynamic playmakers on offense. In 2000, number 7 on this list, they kind of cheated and slammed 2 teams together here. They put the 11 and 12 Alabama Crimson Tide. Those are the 2 McCarron teams. They both won national championships. One broke LSU's heart. The other one crushed Notre Dame. That offensive line is the best offensive line I've ever seen. It had Chance Warmack and DJ Fluker and Cyrus Quandro and Barrett Jones, and they were really good on defense as well. Talking about some all-time Alabama players on those defenses with Eddie Lacy and Trent Richardson running the football. Really good teams. So to put them at 7, I'm good with that. It's the 11 defense for Alabama was absolutely as good as LSU's 11 defense, which is one of the best in the history of the sport for my money. LSU couldn't score a touchdown in 8 quarters on them. So figure that's a pretty quality team. At 6, you got 2020 Alabama. That's going to be one of the toughest teams to ever classify in the history of college football because they were really good, but they played the COVID year, and so it was weird. They didn't play true road games. Teams were playing without players, quarantine and contact tracing, whatever. They're a good team. They're the Heisman Trophy winner. I'm okay with Alabama at number 6, even though in 2020 I think that's just a weird year. Number 5, the 2019 LSU Tigers at number 5 on this list. Not all time. The last 25 years, they've got this LSU team at number 5. I just have a hard time with that, quite frankly. I could try to make the case, and they said the 2019 LSU team had arguably the best offense in college football history. They talk about Burrow, Chase, Jefferson, Clyde, all that. They said that they, in the regular season, LSU broke its 8-game losing streak to Alabama, later had their way with Georgia in the SEC championship game, 37-10, dismantled Oklahoma, 63-28, and then beat Clemson 42-25 in the title game. They don't try to make an argument as to why LSU wouldn't be higher. And I feel like that would be necessary when talking about this team because I don't know anybody that's got LSU in that 2019 team at 5th. Not all time, not the last 25 years. You want to start tossing that Nebraska team in there, okay. You want to start talking about Miami teams, okay. But 5th over the last 25 years, that's pretty bold. So what's ahead of that team? They've got 2021 and 22, the back-to-back champs from Georgia. That's Stetson Bennett's team with all those first-rounders and high picks on defense. Okay, I just don't think so. Sorry. One of those teams lost a game. They lost to Bama in the SEC championship game. So that's a detractor. And if you want to fight this fight with Joe Burrow against Stetson Bennett, I'll play, and I'll take Joe. Great Georgia defense. Great. And solid on the offense as well. That's a tough sell for me. Better than LSU. 2005 Texas, that's Vince Young's team. Had Jamal Charles. That's pretty athletic 1-2 punch in the backfield there. But again, I just don't know if I'm going to go ahead and put Texas's 05 team in front of LSU in 2019. The team that they beat in the national championship game, that USC team with Reggie Bush, was really, really good. But I just don't know if you look at what LSU had on the field on offense and defense. You look at what those guys did on the field, dismantling Alabama, dismantling Georgia, dismantling Clemson, dismantling Oklahoma, never trailing in the fourth quarter, never having to make those big-time clutch plays. That's tough for me. Vince Young's really good, but LSU just feels like they're deeper and more talented. Then number 2 is USC in 03 and 04. That's Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush and Lindale White and the ridiculous run that Pete Carroll had there. Mike Williams was a receiver on that team. It was a great run, and those teams were excellent. And I feel like they deserve to get a ton of credit. And I feel like you can debate that team with LSU, and then as you would probably guess, 2001 Miami comes in here at number 1. You can put LSU in that discussion for this list with 03-4 to the Trojans and the 2001 Miami team. I'm just not going to get on board here with you with the 2 Georgia back-to-back teams and Texas being better than LSU. I think the point of that is to get people like me to be cranky and to bring it up and to send it to people and to click on it. I understand the world of needing clicks. That's all well and good. That sometimes pays the bills. Programmatic advertisers like the fact that you're getting a lot of clicks. That's just a bridge too far in my estimation. Yeah, Georgia beat TCU 65-7 in the national championship game. Awesome. They also got taken right to the wire by Ohio State in a 42-41 game in the game before that. I can't get on board with it. I'm sorry. It's a fun exercise. No one can be right or wrong. But when you look at the fact that LSU has the 2 unanimous all-pro wide receivers and the NFL's passing yardage leader 4 or 5 years later that were on that team that were doing amazing things. I mean, y'all know the LSU team in 2019. I'm not here to rant and rave and yell and scream about this list that Fox Sports put together. I do understand that Fox has the television contract rights with the Big Ten and that USC is in the Big Ten and that Miami's not in the SEC. So you could try to convince me that this is some sort of backhanded slap at the SEC because we control this conference and not yours, so we'll go give the nod to our conference now. I don't really care to have that discussion, but any list to me that's going to put the 2019 LSU Tigers, as dominant as they were, as star-studded as they were, as many decorations they took home, and what those guys have done in the NFL, and you want to ditch them back to 5th for Stetson Bennett, I'm going to probably bristle at that just a touch. I just don't think that's correct. I'd like to chat with the person who made the list. Nobody's name's on it, so I guess it'll live in anonymity. Maybe it's Joel Klatt. Maybe it's somebody else typing over there at the Fox offices. But I will choose to politely disagree and move on from the conversation because I just don't think it's. I don't think they did a perfect job here. We'll just put it at that. We got one segment to go. Come back with us to close out a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group. HighlandIG.com is the website. Have you ever gone online and given your insurance broker a 5-star review? It's just not something we do a lot of. A lot of folks don't love the interactions they have with insurance brokers because they feel like those premiums keep climbing and there's nothing they can do about it. I doubt the first thing you're going to do is go on to Google and say how awesome a job your insurance broker's doing. That actually happens quite a bit with the Highland Insurance Group. They've got over 100 reviews for how great their customer service is. They're people, they're local, and they're here to help. They want to be a trusted part of your team. You trust your CPA, you trust your attorney, especially when things don't go great. That kind of the nature of things in the insurance business as well. You want to be able to trust your insurance broker when things eventually go south, whether that's a car accident, lawsuit, cyber breach, hurricane, whatever the case may be. You need to be able to trust your insurance broker, and you can if you work with Jonathan Carbo and his team at the Highland Insurance Group. They're online at highlandig.com. They're right here in Baton Rouge. If you're a business owner, you'd like to make some changes to your insurance program this year, Highland Insurance Group needs to be the first contact that you make. Check them out online, highlandig.com, highlandig.com.
The Windsor Senior Living Community in Mandeville, Louisiana is a beautiful, vibrant apartment community geared toward seniors. They are nestled right in the heart of Mandeville, where seniors live a more carefree lifestyle in spacious apartments with the peace of mind that comes from having a little extra help. Call the Windsor at 985-624-8040 to schedule a lunch and tour. Come see how the Windsor can be your passport to peace of mind.
At Auctioner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Auctioner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one: you. Auctioner Andrews Institute. Long live you.
Got chores that need some extra muscle, but a large piece of equipment is overkill? That's what John Deere compact utility tractors were made for. Powerful enough for the work you need to do. Compact enough for how you need to do it. Find the equipment that's right for you at Sunshine Quality Solutions. Check out our current promotions and learn more about what it means to be powered by sunshine at sunequip.com.
Breck teamed up to reimagine your parks, and you imagined big. With your help, we went to work, creating 12 beautiful community parks across the parish. A family-sized water park, miles and miles of trails, and parks just for your dogs. There are more places to splash, to explore, to run wild, and even soar. You imagined, we delivered gold. Breck, your #1 park system in the nation.
Gulf Coast Office Products is a nationally recognized Savin office equipment dealer based right here in Louisiana. Over 100 employees strong, Gulf Coast has the boots on the ground to support all vertical markets, from education, engineering, legal, and finance. With the latest in office technology, from desktop to production segment units, Gulf Coast and Savin have the perfect fit for you. Call 225-756-2644. That's 756-2644 for Gulf Coast Office Products.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
It's Conference Championship Sunday in the NFL. First, the Eagles host Jay Daniels and the Commanders for the NFC title at 2 p.m., and then the Kansas City Chiefs will host the Bills in their classic rivalry for the AFC Championship at 5:30. Your home for the NFL playoffs and Super Bowl 59 is 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. And we've also got the Pels for you coming up tomorrow night. They will go on the road at 7 p.m. against the Memphis Grizzlies, and then Saturday at 6 we'll take on the Charlotte Hornets, and Monday 6:30 the Toronto Raptors. Your home for the New Orleans Pelicans is 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
The Red Hot Pels, is that what you called them?
I didn't say that, but they are red hot.
But you maybe should have?
Yeah, probably should have,
What a
honestly.
team.
Hon. I mean, look, if they just win like 20 games in a row, they'll be back into the play-in.
Wow.
That's all they got to do.
I think I like their chances.
I
Great
do
team.
too, yeah.
Amazingly well constructed, never hurt.
Well, honestly, Hunt, they were pretty well constructed, I think. Problem wasn't the construction
That's
of the
debatable.
team. I mean, we're seeing it right now. The team win pretty healthy.
A week?
they're playing pretty well with their players that aren't hurt.
I'm not here to dump on the Pels. The Pels have had a tough go of it, so I'm thrilled they're playing great, even if it costs them a high draft pick. But maybe they can trade some of the players that are playing great.
Maybe
and
so.
Reconstruct some things.
How about that?
Could be. Breaking news that everyone's going to be really locked in on here. Myers Daycare is open tomorrow. Let's go.
Wow.
We like that.
Alrighty.
Get him out of here. Kid needs to get off the couch.
What happened today, by the way?
Alyssa clinic was closed for her, so she was able to do some home. I stayed at home until about 11. I got my stuff done. He's pretty content to sit on the couch and watch TV.
I can imagine.
He needs to get out of the house and do something.
Yes.
That needs to happen pretty quickly. So hopefully she can get him out on the bike or something this afternoon. But the snow spooked him. He was not keen on going out there. It's cold.
That's
and,
unfortunate, man. It really. I mean, maybe in a year or two, if it would have happened,
I think a year later he'd have been all. But maybe if we had some gloves, but we're just not prepared. We don't own the stuff. It is what it is. He was out there in sweatpants. I was out there in sweatpants. We just didn't do a great job. I texted Alyssa Monday. I was like, do we need to get him gloves? She's like, we're not going to buy gloves for one snow. Maybe that was the right call. Maybe it wasn't the right call. I don't know. I don't even know where you buy gloves. I have no idea.
You can get gloves at any place you buy clothes for a kid, I think.
Like snow gloves?
Well, maybe not snow gloves. You maybe have to go to
I mean, I know multiple people that had like rubber gloves from the kitchen they put on the kids and then do like the wool gloves over them so they got wet and the hands didn't get wet. Whatever. I saw one of my friends put his kid in basically Ziploc bags that were like zip tied around the hands. That was his 5-year-old daughter. So, I mean, we just didn't do much of that. Once he was spooked, it just wasn't a lot of outside time for the Palmers. He needs to get outside and do something. That needs to happen. So glad he can go to daycare tomorrow. Back to work. All right, we got to take it or leave it?
We do.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
All right, first one here. The Baseball Writers Association of America announced the results of the 2025 Hall of Fame voting. Ichiro, along with CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner actually got in on his last year of eligibility. All got in with the 75% required. Ichiro, however, one vote short of being a unanimous selection. Take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave it. It's a weird flex by one Hall of Fame guy. I don't know who it is, if that vote's going to come out or whatnot, but if there's a weird flex from those Hall of Fame guys that don't want people in unanimously. It is a flawed way of thinking to think that you need to be important enough to be the vote that distinguishes Ichiro from Babe Ruth. Well, Babe Ruth wasn't unanimous, so Bob Gibson wasn't unanimous. I can't put Ichiro. That's just, you're either a Hall of Famer or you're not, and that's really poorly done by whoever it was. Ichiro led the league in hits like 7 times. Was a lifetime 308 hitter. It was led the league in steals once. Was an MVP. He won like 9 Gold Gloves. He's one of the best contact hitters in the history of baseball. And who knows what his numbers would have looked like if he played the first 7 years in America instead of in Japan. He maybe could have threatened Pete Rose. I don't know. But it's just such self-important thinking. I think I need to be the one guy that takes Ichiro from being unanimous. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and also it's just still so funny because they, for some reason, decided that look, I'm not going to besmirch the name of Mariano Rivera, but he might be the greatest closer of all time. But still, you decide to make him unanimous, but you've got all these other guys, especially with Ichiro happening this year, where you can't make him unanimous. It makes no sense to me. It's really stupid. And we'll move on to another thing that is pretty stupid, in my opinion. Andrew Jones, again, fell short of the 75% of votes necessary to be elected. He only has 2 years left of eligibility. Jones will get in the next 2 years. Take it or leave it.
I didn't see how far he got this year.
He got 66 or 68, I think.
He'll get there.
I'll take it.
I know he's got like 10 Gold Gloves, and I think he hit 350 home runs or 400 home runs.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, he hit a lot of home runs, and he won a lot of Gold Gloves. He was one of the best players in the major leagues for almost a decade. He absolutely, in my opinion, is a my
10-time
computer's
Gold
dead, by
Glover.
the way. So,
yeah, he had 434 home runs.
I mean, 434 home runs and 10 Gold Gloves in one of the most challenging defensive positions in Major League Baseball. He's the best defensive center fielder in the sport, for a decade, and he hit more than 430 home runs. I don't know what we're looking at here. Are we trying to pin PEDs on the guy because of when he played? I can't figure that out, but that's well beyond the marks you need to be a Hall of Famer, and it's laughable again that he's not in. I can't come up with anything on that.
All right, last one real quick. The Bengals have hired Notre Dame defensive coordinator Al Golden to take over for Lou Anarumo. The Bengals defense will be better. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it.
I'll take it.
They probably need to focus some free agent money on that. I don't know what the cap situation is. I do know that Jamar Chase's cap situation is about to get a lot worse. So I hope it's better. I hope that Al Golden is great. But Lou Anarumo was thought of as great 2 years ago. And not now, because you let Jesse Bates walk because of money, and it's just hard to stay that good. So you hope Hendrickson's got some more years of good football in him, and go find somebody else that can play on the defensive side in free agency. We'll see. Huge Bengals fan. Really more of a Commanders fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think you might need to switch. Not a switch allegiance, but I think they're your top team now.
Matt's going to drive you home on AFR. We're back tomorrow with the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
There it is, the extra mile, on the border of expected and extraordinary, for those willing to go further, like vans customized for work or play, with safety and tech to keep you connected, supported by a 5-star sales service